introduce Brenda to you. I knew that was coming. But I did want to start off just acknowledging that we all live on different territorial lands, and mostly in the province of Ontario, that have been occupied by our First Nations people. And I want us to take a moment to acknowledge the trauma, the losses, and the gifts of our Indigenous brothers and sisters who've occupied this land long before we have. We need to walk in right relations with our First Nations communities and with the promise of helping to right the wrongs that have been done to them. When I initially spoke with Brenda by email about the potential of coming and speaking and working with us, I think is the right word I would use. I was asking in relation to the bodies of the children found in the residential schools, and she told me some really good reasons why she could only tell her own stories. And I'm hoping she'll use part of our time together to teach some of the different ways we as allies can be helpful to our Indigenous brothers and sisters, and to be open and really reflective of the things that we're going to learn today and take them forward with us. So as you probably read on our event Moby, Brenda is a very well accomplished woman. Her Indigenous name is Medicine Song Woman, and she has been doing healing music and spiritual teachings to upwards of 3,000 people across North America. She's based in the London no, you're not, you're in Toronto, but you were the London, Ontario based Juno award-winning singer and motivational speaker. That had me totally messed up, but I've now understood it better, having read it 3 times. Brenda was adopted by a non-Indigenous family at her birth, and lost her adoptive mom to suicide and her adoptive father to a massive heart attack before the age of 18. She's had many other losses, I'm sure, that will come out in her presentation. And Brenda's work goes very far in healing those who are part of her experiences, and we hope will assist us in healing some of the relationships that have been caused in our history. And Brenda, I would, with great gratitude, thank you for being with us, miigwech, and I know we will learn much from you.
Miigwech, thank you for that beautiful intro and for having me speak. And for asking for me to speak, you know, about what is going to happen today. And I know we went back and forth a little bit, but it's been helpful for me too to kind of go deeper. And yeah, so I'm going to start off by just introducing myself in the language. So. Bojo mishkikina gamana niquinadishna cause go coco nido dem calgranin dunchaba deshkan zibu mcwana dada Anishinaabe Kwe, Irish, Minwa, Scottish, Endau. So I'm just saying greetings, and that my Indigenous name is Medicine Song Woman. I'm Owl Clan, and I was born, as you heard, in Calgary, and then even though I mostly grew up in BC, and I'll talk about that later, but I also I said that I live here, and I do live here in London, yes. I moved in May from Toronto to London, so I live on the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Lenawepek, Attawandaron peoples, and Haudenosaunee. And I'm grateful to be here on these lands, and still connected with the Dish with One Spoon treaty. And I honestly am still learning more about that. So I'll share a welcome song, because that's how I start everything, is just with prayer and song, and the prayer for me is usually in the song. But also this is going to get you right into what we're going to be doing together here, because I'm not all about like book teaching and learning. Great, books are awesome, but that's just not what I do and not who I am. And so the drum gives me everything, my voice gives me everything, and so when I share and I start ceremony with a welcome song, I'm welcoming all of you, you know, and I'm like glad to be here, but I'm also welcoming all of those ones who walk before you, all of your ancestors, all of what I call your higher realm support team, whatever that means for you, whatever your belief system is, and mine. I'm welcoming them all in. I'm acknowledging them, thanking them for being here all this time for us. and in this, supporting us through this time together. And so I'm going to sing a song called Breath of Life. And the reason I'm saying it, well, it's sort of leading into what we're going to be doing, is instead of this, just hearing it up here in your head, you're going to actually be experiencing. We're going to have give you an experience. So the first part of this experience is I want you to breathe. Breathe into your belly, because I think you all know, and if you don't, you're going to get it by the end of this, that just walk around for the rest of today and notice how many times you catch yourself not breathing. Notice how many times you catch yourself just barely breathing, right? And I mean, that was even pre-COVID. We were all kind of doing that, but now it's much, much worse, because a lot of trauma and grief is just everywhere, inside and outside of us. So Breath of Life was a reminder to me that came after my son passed. I needed to do something for myself, and I'll talk a bit more about the whole experience of that, but I needed a reminder to breathe, because I wasn't breathing. And I didn't realize that trauma and grief do that to you. And I learned that when I talked to an Indigenous author, and his name escapes me right now, but his last name is Pitawanakat. And he wrote a book called When My Son Died. And so I wanted to just go and talk to him. And then he went like that and went, breathe. He just went like that to my heart center and said, breathe. You're not breathing. And I was like, whoa, I didn't, and I teach about breathing and breath work. So that was, and I sing. You have to be able to breathe very deeply to sing. But that's what it does. And so I'll catch myself in those moments and bring myself back into the breath and breathing into our bellies. And my osteopath, who has been helping me with nervous system dysregulation and chronic pain after I lost my son, also said, it's not just down into your belly, though. You got to kind of breathe into all of this up here, too. I'll breathe into your heart center and bring it down into your belly after that. Because what happens is if you skip down to the belly, you're skipping that whole heart center, and you're not allowing that dysregulation to kind of clear. So, so I'm going to share Breath of Life. And when I do, it's going to be very obvious when I'm breathing a lot of the time. And when you hear those breaths, I want you to breathe, too. Are you breathing? And just check in with yourself. How deeply are you breathing? Did you forget again? Because it's very quick. I know I'll catch myself 5 minutes after I just did a deep breathing exercise. I'm not breathing. So I'm going to take a sip of water and I'll share Breath of Life. So breathing all the way down. Ha, ha, we, ha, ya, hey, ya, ha, ya, we, ya, ha, we, ya, ha, we, ya, ha, we, ya, ha, we, ya, hey, ya, we, ya, hey ya, we ya, hey ya, we ya, hey ya, we ha, we ya ha, ya we ha, we ya ha. way ah, way ah, way ah, way ah, way ya, hey ya, oh way ya, hey ya, way ya, hey ya, way ya, hey ya, way ya, Yahweh, way So breathing, take a nice big, huge, deep heart and belly breath. Because what that does is it brings us out of anxiety land. Like, you know, because it looks like you're breathing sometimes from your heart, but we're not. We're like, when it's really just shallow breathing and we're not mindful, we're not in our heart space, what happens is it takes you into anxiety land and into where all those ridiculous thoughts are, right? And those patterns of, and the laundry list of things that you have to do and whatever else is going on up there, instead of being in our bodies. And it's so simple. All we have to do is take that belly breath and you're in your body. You're in your body. Instantly, you break that connection between you and anxiety land. That simple. So, and I know it's not that simple in spaces where COVID is very present. So I'll talk about that because I don't know. You know, some of you may have been working in those spaces where there are a lot of people who may have it. And so I've been, you know, mindful of that with the story that I share, even with that song. And but when you have those moments, like really take those deep breaths in. When you see yourself and notice yourself hunching over and you're not quite breathing, take those breaths, take those moments. So yeah, a little bit about what I'll share, like how to be fully present for yourself. And this is part of it, right? That's where it starts. Breath. That's where it starts. Being in our bodies. How to be fully present for yourself and Indigenous people with traumatic grief. Number 2, what this pandemic's done for and to us to help us grieve and heal. So, you know, a lot of not so pleasant things, but also some really good learnings, and some of them I'll share. So, you know, number 3, learn simple mind-body exercises like what we just did to help you embody resilience, because that's what it does. It activates your resilience within you that you already have, and it helps you to grow it, and it helps you also, it's just so many ways that it helps you to be in your body when it feels like sometimes you don't want to be. So I'll share a little bit about my story too, along with a couple more healing songs to help us integrate, and some teachings and simple activities as well, again, to integrate, but also to have it in your body, because your body might remember what your brain doesn't, right? Like, we have so much going on and all these thoughts, and probably half of you are multitasking. I'm calling you out. I do it too. So, you know, like all these things going on, but our brains aren't going to remember all that stuff, but our bodies will. So if we're present in our bodies, then that's a better way to remember. Anyway, so it's a good way to learn when you're just getting things into your body instead of just hearing blah, 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 and that's all, right? So we're going to do things to get it into your body as well. So, and you know, it's all to help you embody resilience. It's help you understand how to help and be a good ally to Indigenous people, whether it's your clients, your friends, your family, and what this pandemic has actually done, again, to and for us, right? So what I'm going to teach you, it's going to help you, but it's also going to help your clients. And it will spread out and have this beautiful ripple effect to everyone that you're talking to. So a little about me. I'm a 60 scoop survivor. And for those of you who don't know what that means, It means I was adopted out in the 60s and basically passed off as white, which doesn't always happen in the 60s scoop. But I was passed off as white as well as being adopted into a white family. And I was told that I was white. The adoption papers said that, and so was my family that adopted me. They were told I was white as well. So I was gaslit from birth, which is the truth for all Indigenous people. Gaslit from birth. And I'm even going to make that stretch and say you were also gaslit from birth if you were born in Canada, because you didn't know anything that was going on here either, right? So, and I didn't know anything that was going on. So trust is hard for me because of that, and for many Indigenous people. So it's really, really hard for you to gain trust of Indigenous people when all of these things have happened, and it's like, we don't know. Can we trust you? You know, and there's also just a lot of confusion around like who we are as a people and as an individual. For me, you know, I was experiencing racism as a child, and I didn't even know that's what it was, because I didn't know I was Indigenous. I didn't know I was different than anyone else. I'm like, whatever. People look a little different than me, and I look a little different than them, and whatever. But yeah, I experienced racism because of being Indigenous and didn't know it. I was beat up in Kamloops the first day of school when we moved there. And that's why it hit me so hard when I heard about the 215 children, because I didn't know about that going on when I was living there. And while I was 1973, I was there when all that stuff was going on. And, you know, I was even treated as an outcast in Kamloops when I got there in 2007 on tour for one of my albums. We went into a restaurant. My friend looked very visibly Indigenous that was driving me, and we literally got completely ignored. They would not give eye contact. They would not serve us. We went to the second counter. They would not serve us, and we had to walk out because they would not see us. They literally would not see us. And that's just 2007, right? So it's really weird. And so I have a love affair with Kamloops, but I always say it's the land that I was connected to, because the hills, the sagebrush. I have a rock from Kamloops, from almost my backyard, like around the corner of where I grew up. I have sage that's over on my other desk here from the area that a friend of mine picked and sent me. And you know, and to add insult to injury, that beautiful sagebrush that I have here, I would not be able to get now because that entire village was completely burnt down. That was Lytton that she comes from. So all of this is going on, right? There's so many layers to the grief that we carry and the experiences that Indigenous people are having right now. And all I can share with you is what I've seen with my friends and what I've experienced myself, right? So yeah, I've not known who I was since I was born, and I still don't. Identity recovery for me is probably going to be a lifelong journey, and I may never know who I am. And a lot of us won't. Because it's so complicated because of the reserve system and how that works. It's tied to money, it's tied to politics, and it's tied to greed. And it's tied to just this whole colonial idea of let's try and find ways to make people fight with each other so that they won't come together and love one another and be a community, which is so much of a cornerstone of who we are. So I don't know who I am. I know one side of me and not the other. And my birth mother refuses to tell me really the truth about any of that. So with the reserve system being tied to money and all of that, our ancestors were also given new names, a lot of them. It's like, well, we can't pronounce that, so now you're going to be called Bruce. Like, that's your name now. Whoops, we don't like your last name being Indigenous, so now we'll just call you this. And I think in residential schools, it was actually numbers, not even names. So it's just, it's a lot has been taken away, and we're recovering some, right? We're recovering what we can. And for each person, it's different, and for each community, it's different. But just because one of my parents or other relatives is from a First Nation community, it doesn't mean I can just claim that I'm part of that community. I don't get to do that. I could very well find out tomorrow that I belong to X community, and I do not have the right to claim that I belong to that community because of the way that that system is built. It's designed to break up and damage our communities and families. So that's why, you know, many of us will just never know, or just give up and just like, whatever, not going to bother, right? So, but I'm going to tell you what I actually have in common with all of you. And this is going to be weird and a little bit heavy for some of you. So take a big belly breath. COVID brings us a very mild micro version of what it's like to lose a child to murder. That's what people have been carrying around all this time. That's everybody. That's not just Indigenous people. So, I mean, when you go back to the first time you heard about it, like for me, it was, you know, I'm scrolling Twitter and I'm like, what? In Australia, they're like buying up toilet paper like nobody's business. What's going on, right? That was my first thing. I'm like laughing, going, what is this? And then I realized there's some weird disease. I'm like, what? You know, so whatever that was for you, and then the shock that goes with that. It's like, that's happening here now? That's actually real? And then there's the denial that starts to happen. And for me, you know, it creeps up every now and then. I'm like, but are we really? Is this really happening? Like, how is this real? It's so surreal. You know, waves of grief off and on. And for many people, even if you haven't lost someone, you lost maybe your job or your ability to work at your job, you know, outside of your house. People in your life, like these days, it's so divisive that now we're losing friendships, relationships are falling apart from the isolation and all kinds of other reasons, you know, and the trauma that goes with that. But what you may not know about losing a child to murder, which really is so many Indigenous people's experience or indirect experience, is that just like this pandemic, it does not stop. It's not like the person died and now they're gone and that's it. It continues. The court case is still happening. My son died in 2016. It's up for appeal right now. So I'll get a phone call at some point, or an email, and it will be, you know, a couple of days of court and decide whether this person who killed my son will just get off all charges or not. So it continues. And so, you know, kind of like, I mean, in this pandemic we've seen re-traumatization from, you know, we start off with like all these press conferences every day. You're like, oh no, what's happening now? Oh, what are the rules now? Oh, what can I do now? What's safe and what isn't? Like, you know, all the time. And now it's sort of like lightened up, but it's still happening. We still don't know. What are the real rules? What are we allowed to do? You know, who can we see? What can we do? And what variant is popping up now? Like there's all these things. And so when you lose someone to murder, it's not like it just is a death. It just keeps on giving pain over and over. Things are up in the air, you know, eggshells, you're walking on eggshells. It's like, you don't know what to do. And the media, and there's lies. There were lies all the way through, well, obviously in the trial, there's all kinds of lies by the lawyers and, you know, there's the media making up all kinds of interesting stories, the police making up all kinds of stories because they are doing what they want to do to keep the public feeling safe. You know, I would see like CBC put up, I'm calling them out because I have before, you know, put up a picture after asking me, but I thought, oh, how that's really nice that they actually asked me for a picture of my son. But then they went and scrolled his Instagram and found the hoodiest of the hoodiest, because my son used to smoke pot. So they picked the one picture that he had of him with a joint hanging out of his mouth. And that was what everybody got to see in the newspaper. So everybody, you know, can think, oh, it's because that, you know, oh, what a thug or whatever. So all of that was happening. And, you know, my son was being made out to look like some kind of a thug or a gang member, which he was never. And so there's that disinformation. Right? We're seeing disinformation now as well. You never know what's true. You have to like do so much research to find out what's true. And for me, there was no way to do research. You just had to wait and hear about it online. I literally one time had one of my really super respectful media contacts talked to me ahead of time, texted me and said, they're going to do a press conference. That's the best I can do to let you know. So at least I had a heads up before the rest of the world would hear about my son before me. So that's what happens. And, you know, the missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, Two-Spirit, and trans folks, that's ongoing. That's ongoing. And that's what it does. And then on top of it, people are living through this pandemic. So there are things you need to get yourself through that, and we don't necessarily have those things. I do. I'm fortunate that I do, because if I didn't, I don't know where I'd be right now. So, you know, I'm gonna just say a few more things here, but I want you to breathe. I'm reminding you to breathe and stay present in your body for this, right? I'm gonna sing a healing song for you after this. So, like, imagine, you know, what I was just sharing with you, you know, that's my experience. So now, like, take the pandemic experience. We're all in, right? This is all happening here. And imagine that, yeah, you someone in your life was murdered. And it's hard for anyone to imagine that. But imagine your entire community, not just your family, but the entire town where you live grieving the loss of your child. Because that's what it's like in our communities. I had people show up to my son's celebration of life that I didn't even know. Hundreds of people, because that's how we support each other. And to add on to that, that you just have at least one relative that's gone missing. And let's say you also know at least one of the women who was put on the birth alert list and had to choose between being forcibly sterilized or having her baby that was just born. Because that's 2018 we're talking about there. Now let's say that one of your relatives died at school and was buried in the schoolyard, and you know it, but you can't prove it. That is what's happening. That's a slice of what's happening for so many Indigenous people, and really all of us to some degree, because we are so connected. We consider each other to be relatives. All Indigenous grief is collective, complicated grief. All of it. All Indigenous grief is collective, complicated grief. We consider each other relatives, so when one of us is hurt, we're all hurting, and we're all there to support each other. It affects us all. A friend right now of mine is in the States, and she's on my prayer list because her brother just attempted suicide, and he's now in a coma. And of course that hits me because my mother committed suicide. I don't even know her that well, this person I'm talking about, but to me we are still relatives, and I'm there for her. I sent her some money to help her with her travels. And this is how it is, right? And that's kind of, you know, to bring it back to the pandemic a little bit happening, right? We see like things like this conference happening, and where people really are starting to try and come together and help, right? And be good allies to Indigenous folks, to Black and people of color, and other marginalized people, so that we can really, you know, start to live together in a good way, which we know is going to take a lot of work, but we can get there, and we have an opening right now to do that. So, so yeah, we know also, like as Indigenous people, that all of our actions affect the 7 generations before us and the 7 generations after us. So that, you know, means we can literally heal the past and the future in the present. We can do that. And so this is one of the gifts of this whole pandemic, is that we have this opening. And it's an opening of a deep, deep wound, right? Or many deep, deep wounds for some people. And it's also the healing salve at the same time for that wound is already here. Like that, they both are here. That's nature, by the way. You know, if you find a poisonous plant, you can be sure that next to it somewhere, there's going to be the cure for whatever that poison is. That's the way nature is. So we also have intergenerational trauma from residential school survivors, institutions, I'd rather call them. We have been othered, gaslit, and treated as less than human ever since Canada began, and it is still happening. I have survivor guilt, and I know I'm not the only one, from surviving when all those children didn't, right? Like, I mean, I see myself as that 7-year-old girl, and I'm like, I got beat up and I had racist incidences against me, and I'm alive. I'm still here. I didn't get taken away. Perhaps my birth mother did me a favor in a way by hiding me, and that's probably why she did it, so that I would not have to be taken violently, ripped out of the streets or out of my home, right? So all of that has happened ever since Canada began. And that's why I said all of us really have been gaslit that way. And so back to, saying that there are things that we need to be able to get through stuff like this. And that was taken away from us. Our culture, our spiritual traditions were outlawed. You could get executed or put in jail for practicing your traditions. If I were to pull out a drum back then, no. Or sing or speak my language, which I'm just baby steps learning right now. All of that was taken, and as well as the land and the connection to it. And so, and really, that's where we need to go back to, is that's where we, get back to normal. That's normal. Normal is being connected to land, connected to community, connected to yourself and your body, right? Caring about each other, and that's where we need to go. So, so the genocide is still ongoing, and this so-called discovery, because that's what the media framed it as for a lot of the time, it's been known by Indigenous communities for generations. The government knew, obviously, they were doing it. The ones who were doing it, obviously they knew. The church, of course, knew. The RCMP were helping. They were all implicit in this. And it's even been in the media for at least a decade now. But still, their stories were ignored. The people who went through that and survived to tell their story, their stories have not been validated or acted upon, So while it's still shocking to some of you, because maybe you never saw those media articles, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, whenever it was, maybe it's still shocking for some people. It's old news for most of Indigenous folks, especially ones who have lived on community and are connected to that. And it's also still a shock to the system. So even though we all, it's shocking, it's not news, but it is still shocking, because it's again, going back to that experience. I've told you what it's been like for me, losing my child to murder. And that's a whole bunch of children lost to murder. Even if you call it, maybe it wasn't exactly murder, but it was to do with the nutritional experimentation, feeding children food with maggots and mold in it. Maybe it was from, medical experimentation and seeing what would happen there. Maybe it was from abuse, or maybe it was because they tried to leave and died on the way home. So all of that, it's old news, but it is still a shock to the system, and and to yours. And so it's still acknowledge that, right? You'll have all kinds of feelings right now, and I don't know what your feelings are, but I'm pretty sure that guilt will be part of it. And even for me, right? I'm Irish and Scottish as well as Anishinaabe, and I don't even know my roots, and it's just, there's so many feelings. So we need to acknowledge our own feelings in order to, because if you push those down, you can't be there for Indigenous folks if you're pushing down those feelings. You got to be there for your own feelings too, and really accept and acknowledge that, and then be able to accept and acknowledge theirs. So my son would have been 35 on October 16th. So, I've been dealing with my own further re-traumatization, right? All those anniversary dates. And so I'm going to share a song with you now to kind of bring us into here's some, this is some knowledge, and now you know some things that perhaps you didn't know before. But I also want to bring you into a more of a healing space and sort of help you to integrate this and be with it, right? Remember to be in your body with it, and allow yourself to receive whatever healing you want. And so this song came from my son when he was 14. His name was Quinn Taylor. And when Quinn was 14, he was doing, was going through what 14-year-old boys do, and he was having a hard time. And so he asked, he used to call me and ask for help after the song came. But when he was having a hard time, one day while he was at school, I took out my drum and that I had made actually, and I took out his eagle feathers that I was holding for him, that he had received in Sweat Lodge for just his strength in there. And I asked for a song, and that's what I do. That's why they call me Medicine Songwoman, and the spirits call me that, because I listen and the songs come. And so this song came, and it's called Healing Song. And and I'll share this with you, and just I want you to really let yourself receive in whatever way that is. And it's also up to you. But healing can't happen without permission. It can never happen without permission. So I'm going to take a sip of water and share this. But I invite you to be in your body and think about you first. And if you do know anyone you want to pray for, or that could use some healing, you can invite them to receive it. And on an energetic level, that can happen, but not without their permission. So if they want it, then they'll receive it. But if they don't, they're not going to receive it. So Healing Song, and this has been shared really worldwide now, and it is on the same album, and I'll share the link later so you can go and find it. But when you hear these honor beats, the first 4 that I'm going to do are I'm sending out all of our prayers, all of our intentions into the 4 directions, but really in all directions. And that's how I'll start a lot of my songs. So when you hear that, that's what I'm doing. I'm actually being told to hold the eagle feather as well. So, This eagle feather I have here is actually was gifted to me by an Indigenous woman in the Seattle area when I was down there to sing for Women's Powwow. And this is her daughter's feather. Her daughter was murdered. And she wanted me to carry this or wear it whenever I sing a song to help women who have lost a daughter. So there must be someone either watching the replay or watching live that has perhaps lost their daughter. And so for that, I'm sorry and honoring this request. Yeah. in, letting yourself really release and receive and flow whatever is meant for you to receive, release, and flow. And I have just, let me see what else I wanted to share, because I'm aware of the time and I left it kind of open so I would have some space here. So I want to go down to some takeaways for you now, but I'll give you the ebook and the CD link so that you can get that if you want. That's right. Oops, I sent it to Lori. Can you post it for me, please? Thanks. So the last year or two, so this album actually I created during the murder trial. That was what I did. Being told to hold the feather. So I created that album to get me through it, and because I knew it would help people, because that's just who I am. I'm a healer and mentor, and I help women find their voice. And up to that point, that's what I was doing. But now what I'm doing is working with that album and also my healing sessions to help women empaths to get through this whole situation we're in right now. And other transitions too, but just be present in your body, right? With grief and with whatever shows up. And that way to be able to kind of calm down things, like if you have chronic pain like I do, or if you just, like most of us have PTSD at this point, some version of it. And it's crazy that a lot of people don't really know what they're walking around in with. There's so much heaviness and grief that is there, but society literally trained us out of that, trained us to put it down and just ignore it and pretend it went away. And it's no, we can't do that anymore, because this is what's happening now. Things are climbing out from under the rug and we can't stop it. So, let's not put them under the rug to begin with, and things will be a lot different, a lot better. So I created that program. You could find that on my website too. If you're interested to get on the wait list, it's not open right now, but it will be. We open it every season. We do activities like we've just been doing every full moon and every new moon. We have and different classes and ceremonies that we do and it's open to all women and non-binary and non-gender conforming people of any background. So if you want on the wait list, you can email me. I will stick my email in the chat too, so you have it. And I'm going to share a few takeaways with you and try and leave some room for questions. So how you can begin to grow and embody resilience beyond what we just did, right? And be a good ally and be present for yourself, your own grief, as well as Indigenous people. Breathe, right? I'll always remember, I'm reminding my clients all the time, breathe into your belly, get into your body, do what it takes to get into your body and out of anxiety land, right? And what I was saying, if you're in a space where COVID is very present and it's I'm not going to take a huge deep breath. When I did my Toronto gig, I'm I'm not going to tell people to just breathe in all deeply right now. It was the first time that venues were allowed to be open, literally the day after. So what I would say instead is, when you are about to go to work, that last moment before you walk in the door, take some deep belly breaths. And when you leave or have breaks, take some deep belly breaths. Do it then. And it helps your body to remember, right? To get out of that trauma that is just always, it's surrounding us, it's within us. If you're an empath, it's really very present for you. And there are things you can do about that too that I help my clients with. Because it's important. We need to have our energetic boundaries as well as being open. And it's a bit of a balancing act. But it's doable. And number 2 is opening your heart and let yourself be a little vulnerable, right? Hold space for yourself, like I was talking about. Hold space for yourself first, and then hold space for your clients. Because if you come from a place of holding space well for yourself, your clients are going to feel held. They're going to feel safer, and maybe they can talk to you. And same within our relationships, same thing. So you want to be able to be present, but also manage your triggers, right? And the more that you're present in your body, the easier it gets to manage those triggers as well. I used to have panic attacks almost every day. But now when I have one, I'm whoa, I just had one. It's been a few months now. And now I can manage them very, very quickly, as opposed to it taking sometimes up to 3 hours or so to come down from that. We can train ourselves by being aware in our bodies and doing this kind of work, embodied resilience work. So number 3 is move to some music that makes you feel. And it doesn't even matter what makes you feel. Like if it makes you feel angry, if it makes you feel joyful, if it makes you feel like the grief, move to music that makes you feel. It will help everything to move around and not be stuck in your body. Okay. And number 4 is a really cool one because I learned this from my client, one of my clients, private client that I worked with for about a year. Rewire your brains with lyrics that feel like affirmations. And I don't know if I'm going to just sing a couple of rounds of this song. I won't sing the whole thing, but I want you to have this. I want you to have this. I'm going to just sort of continue with a bit of takeaways here, but I want you to have this message because I have a song that came out of an affirmation I created for myself. So I want you to understand, like we're not really all in this together, right? We're not really, but we are kind of. Like there are ways that we are and ways that we aren't. So it's kind of our job to weave those and together and find that that opening and how can we really make it so it feels more like we are in this together. Because this is taking us through this sort of microdose of complicated grief, right? And for Indigenous folks, it's also collective grief. So just, and listen mindfully. This is another thing, like I've, told people, like, please don't send me this, fantasy stuff in my inbox. I don't want to hear it. And no, but this is so good. And I'm like, you did not believe me. You did not honor my boundaries. Goodbye. So, like we all have our beliefs and I am like, we can be open and all of that, but have your boundaries and know where you stand and really like just be in a space too of like, here's the thing, a lot of Indigenous people that in different settings, and if you're a therapist or something like that, you might hear some things that literally sound insane. Like that could never happen. And it did. So believe them when they come and tell you their stories, believe them. Just be in that space of holding space for that, for their truth. Because this is how we got here, is denying the genocide that was created, denying so many things, right? Denying our grief as well. So, yeah, so 2 things we have in common right now, grief and trauma. So we can all kind of help each other through that. And yeah, and it's going to take some time and patience, and that's just the way it is. So I'm going to share, I was going to share a little bit more, but I just want to offer you this little bit of this song because it will help you to kind of solidify all of this. And because I really believe that we are truly love. This is the affirmation. I love you, I see you, I feel you. I love you, I see you, I feel you. That's it. And I said that to myself out loud, and that's what I thought it would be, just an affirmation. But it was, I'm talking to all parts of myself when I say that. I'm talking to the hurt 5-year-old, the 7-year-old, the mom that lost her child. I'm talking to all parts of me, the chronic pain infected part of me, like, the PTSD brain. I'm talking to all of me when I say that. And when I say that to you, I love you, I see you, I feel you. It's because the love that I am loves the love that you are. And if you come from that space, that's how you can really, really hold deep space for people. So I'm going to share this real quick so we can leave a bit of a little time here. And I want you to receive this for yourself. And tell it to yourself too. I love you, I see you, I feel you. I love you, I see you, zogging, get a wobble, man, get a chin, man, get a zogging, get a wobble, man, get a chin, man. I love you, I see you, I feel you. Yeah. So that is the way I wanted to end it. So it's a shorter version, but you know, all of them are on the album, so you can go get that if you want. And by the way, too, when you get the album, whether you get the downloadable or the CD, because I think I gave you the download link, but there's also the hard copy CD. But the ebook that comes with it has the lyrics and it has the teachings about each of the songs, and it also has some activities for you to help you embody resilience. So there's more to it than just the music. It can help you get through this. Yeah. So if anyone has any questions, I am so open to receiving those and doing my best to answer them if I can.
Oh,
And
Brenda, miigwech, you just opened my eyes in so many ways, and opened my heart. I have to say that you hit a few real hard spots that needed a little tender love and care. So thank you for that. Does anybody have any thoughts or questions for Brenda?
I
Jill?
have a question. Beautiful, Brenda. Thank you so much.
thank you.
I may have missed this, and so forgive me if this is already, excuse me, in your bio. What brought you to music? If you believed, or if you were told that you were a white person raised as a white person, what brought you to the music of understanding that where you are in terms the music that you are expressing?
Sweat Lodge. I walked into a space at York University when I was starting to go there, my first year for my BA. And I don't know, I was walking trying to find a class, and walked by this space that was having this potluck, and they said there was going to be an Indigenous elder there. I was like, oh, that sounds really amazing. I still didn't know I was Indigenous. I was in my mid-30s. And so I went and I attended that, and I got to meet a bunch of, like in this room full of people that look like me all of a sudden, you know, asking me these questions like, where are you from? And I'm like, Calgary, here. and I started to learn. And then what happened was, I went through university. I bought a drum at some point when I was connecting in with the community. I was soaking it all up with like a sponge at that point. And at that point, I was also in an abusive relationship. And so I needed to leave that relationship. And I was just completing university while I was doing that. And yeah, and ending that cycle though, you know, for myself and for my kids, and before my daughter was even born. And so I did that. And what happened was, on the way of moving away from campus and going to the same elder that I met there, Lillian McGregor, who is now in the spirit world, bless her. And you know, she said, go to Niikanon. She said, go to Niikanon, go to Andion, you'll get into Niikanon, and then there's daycare for the baby, and for your son, there's help there, for counseling, stuff like that. It was a healing lodge for Indigenous women and children in Toronto, and that's still going on. And that's really where, like, that's in the move that I met someone who drove me that I didn't even know. It was a friend of a friend, who was, her drum group was ending. And I wanted to learn these songs. I was like, wow, I want to learn these songs, because I had gone to Sweat Lodge and was kind of doing a little bit of that. But because I had learned that we could do that, I didn't even know I could do that. And then, yeah, that's how I started. So Spirit Wind is a group. They're still in existence now, but just without me and the founder. Me and my co-founder quit the group years ago, but it still continues. So yeah, that's how we did it.
Thank you. I actually have one more question. I had heard you say at times, I need to hold the eagle feather.
Mm-hmm. That's
I
that's spirit telling me that.
yeah, okay. I was wondering that, and that is amazing. Do you mind if I ask, is that when you say that's the spirit, can you help me understand what that means?
Yeah, I mean, some people would call that God, creator, goddess, whatever that is. But for me, I just call that spirit or source. And sometimes I'll know exactly who it is talking to me, but usually it's just a message I'm getting from spirit. And that's how everything comes. That's how my songs come. That's how the information flows through my healing sessions. It's how I contact the dead, talk to dead people. I do. That's how that happens. I just listen. Yeah. And then when I get a feeling, I'll know. And sometimes I can tell the difference now. And I teach this stuff too. Is like we have our intuition, which lives in our body, and then we also have the higher realms information that can come through. So, yeah. And then there's this, right? Our brains. Yeah. And our heart's intelligence. But yeah.
Wow, beautifully said. Thank you, Brenda. Other thoughts or questions,
Thank you.
friends?
Great questions.
Hi, Brenda. I just wanted to say thank you so much for being so generous to us and giving and revealing so much about yourself because, I think allowing yourself to be so vulnerable really allows us to connect with you. And, I think this is one of I wouldn't say it's my first experience, but I feel like I really understand who you are and like who your spirit is. And I feel like that is such a great teaching to see someone who's kind of so in touch and in tune with themselves to be able to share that with others. I think, someone like myself who wants to be, in the grief community and facilitating discussions, I feel like I want to do a lot of work on being able to do something similar because I really see the value in that. And I, just feeling that connectedness to someone. And I think the music too is such a beautiful touch. And I totally see what you say when you say it's like you're receiving this music because it really does feel like we're almost like connecting to this whole other world. It's just amazing. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Wow, thank you for sharing that, Miigwech, Alicia, and yeah, I mean, in that you're right. Like that's why like people will feel safe to talk to me and like they're heard because yeah, and it's a teaching and it's a hard thing to it's practice because really society has trained us to not do that, to put up a veneer, to like have your face on Facebook and self-advertise as if everything's perfect in your world and all that crap. So we really need to start letting that go. Yeah. Miigwech, thank you.
So for those of you who don't know, I actually long ago was involved with the Toronto Native Family and Child Services online Facebook page, and they would do teachings every day. And it was a great learning for me as an ally who needed to understand the community. And so I reached out to one of the facilitators of that page and I said, I need to ask you a question. Many of the people are of Indigenous backgrounds who are on this page and they're having their morning connections and they're always using Miigwech. And I want to know, is that something as an ally that I'm allowed to use? And it took 3 weeks for somebody to get back to me to tell me it was okay. And I just was like, I don't want to be disrespectful and use language that is only to be used within the community. And I don't understand the meaning. And so the woman who finally wrote back and told me that yes, it was okay as long as you were using it with respect and you were valuing the other person. And she said, but I really appreciate you asking. Nobody in my history has ever asked permission to use a native word. And I said, well, I would ask the same permission of any other community that I meet. Is this a word I'm supposed to use? And she says, you're a little bit more enlightened than some, but thank you for asking. And so I then went back to her with Miigwech because to me it was, she gave me the gift of something I didn't know about our Indigenous communities. So it's
Yeah.
okay to say it as long as you really mean it.
Yeah, exactly. And also understand it's and I'll just say that's Anishinaabe, um, Anishinaabe Ojibwe language. And so if I were out on Six Nations Reserve, it would be Nyahweh.
Yeah.
For Mohawk, for Haudenosaunee people. And there's so many other ways, beautiful ways to say thank you in different languages. But yeah, Miigwech is really kind of central to Toronto for sure.
Yeah.
And most people around, I don't know, basically Ontario people know. They're gonna, and most of us do know what that one means. Yeah. Oh, and I teach people. I'm like, yeah, I've gone to schools and stuff, and I've taught that, and be like, yeah, this is so. Say it back to me, so that people can learn it. Yeah. Whoops.
Christine, please.
Brenda, first off, just simply amazing. And I'm in love with your culture. And it's taught me so much about healing and grief. And I kind of just wanted to let you know I'm in a household of children and animals. And as soon as you started to do your last song, all I heard, you may have seen me turn to look, was my 10-year-old echoing, "You love me."
Aw.
And you really had an effect on my pets. So I just love it how, it goes through more than just us. It really does resonate. And so I thank you so much for sharing, and your gifts are amazing. And I know myself, I've learned so much in just tapping into, my being more than anything else. So absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much. And yeah, speechless. And that's a new thing for me.
Miigwech, thank you. Yeah, cats especially, but yeah, animals seem to just even when my clients are getting healing sessions, they'll find their cat just lands on them. Yeah, I'm surprised my little buddy Pixie didn't make an appearance, because he usually does, but he's probably sleeping.
Any other thoughts or questions? Susan, you usually have something to say.
I knew you were going to do that. It's because I can't speak right now. Because when you were saying, my mother was saying to me. And so I thank you for that. Because obviously, and when you said about having lost a daughter, I lost two. So they came and sat with me for a bit. So, I always find it amazing that I can cry, I can't breathe, and yet I say thank you. So I'm not going to, but I really, truly am. And I just kept trying to breathe, and I managed that. So that's the good thing, and processing through. But yes, thank you for the love. Thank you for the healing. Thank you.
Miigwech, I'm so sorry for your loss, and Miigwech for sharing and for being here.
Thank you, Susan. I knew I'd let you get it out. Any other closing comments? Well, then, on behalf of BON, our board of directors, and those of us attending live and those who will be watching online afterwards, Miigwech, Brenda. I hope you received Susan's mailing recently. It didn't get there?
I don't know. I haven't.
Okay,
checked in the
your
last couple of days.
honorary tobacco is supposed to be on its way. Susan had it and was making sure it was being sent, because we couldn't give it to you physically face to face.
I really appreciate that, Miigwech.
Yes, and I'm sure that if you have more questions in the future, friends, Brenda is more than happy to listen, offer you some of her thoughts. And if you want to follow her on YouTube, I love it when I get the new, because I subscribe to her. I get the new things when they're coming forward, because it always makes my heart happy. So Brenda, with great gratitude, and please know we will all take this forward with us as we support other people, no matter where they come from, with the same love that we would give our own families.
Beautiful, Miigwech. Thank you, and I appreciate. Thank you for having me as part of this, and And I'll also say Bamapi, which is see you later in Ojibwe.
Thank you. I love learning new.
Yeah.
To say it at least 3